One.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of That's the Tap. This is DJ coming to you with my co-host CT. CT, my man, how are you doing?
Hey, what's good, DJ? Everyone, appreciate the love. Episode one was a good success, and we're back for more.
Yeah, now look, thanks to everyone who showed us love. We appreciate it. Obviously, continue to share the news with all your mates. Obviously, hit the subscribe button if you already haven't. CT, good to see you, man. Second episode, and you're looking cool, calm, and collected as always.
Oh yeah, it's always a pleasure talking fights, and man, this is going to be a fun episode. We're previewing the second pay-per-view of the year, and it's probably one of the blockbusters of the year, I think.
I know it's like Christmas came early this year, right? We still haven't seen how the UFC calendar is shaping up. It is definitely shaping up real nice. It announced some massive fights, but obviously UFC 271, a big card for us down here in Australia, or for the Australian New Zealand region, with some of our big superstars. Unfortunately fighting each other, but it's still a big event of significance. We also got other fighters from our region scattered throughout the card as well. So plenty to talk about, plenty of fights, plenty of exciting matchups. And I'm ready to get into it.
Yep, let's go.
Let's go. So obviously, UFC 271 takes place next Sunday for us on the 13th of February, 2022. Obviously, in America, it's on Saturday, Feb 12th, because of the time difference. It's on Sunday for us. We always get to watch the fight daytime on a Sunday, unless it's in Abu Dhabi, then it's a ridiculous 5 a.m. start
Oh,
for us.
yep.
Remember watching the Khabib Gaethje fight? We were
Yeah,
up quite early,
half asleep.
um, half asleep. Um, so this is taking place in Houston, uh, in the Toyota Center. Obviously, it would have been good to have this down here, in either New Zealand or Australia, but with all the everything that's happening with the world, they're keeping it in America. Uh, no complaints as long as we get to see this fight, this card. So we got a really good card, a very top-heavy card in terms of notoriety. We got Israel Adesanya, the champion in the middleweight division, taking on Robert Whitaker, who's the number one contender. Got a banger of a co-main event with Derek Lewis taking on Tai Tuivasa. We also got another very significant middleweight fight with between Jared Cannonier and Derek Brunson. Obviously, a little bit of a title implication there. We'll get into it a little bit more later. And we've got Bobby Green fighting, always entertaining. Andrei Arlovski's in it. And we also got Carlos Alberg, one of Israel Adesanya's teammates, along with, I believe, I hope I get this name right, Mike Mateta, also known as Blood Diamond, who's making his UFC debut, coming from a kickboxing background. Highly regarded within that team and obviously in this region. So everyone's excited to see how that fight plays out. They're kicking the whole card in the early prelims. What are your thoughts on the main event?
Like I said, DJ, it's a banger. Coming off a huge pay-per-view 270 to start the year or kickstart this year. It's going to be a great year of fights, and I don't know if I've looked this forward to a pay-per-view before, DJ. It's certainly on par, if not probably the highest, just because of the local, factor, the local interest for us. Um, Obviously, we were there in the building the last time Izzy and Robert fought. What are your recollections that day?
Man, oh, I remember that very well. I think it was back in 2019, UFC 243, in the Marvel Stadium. We were there quite early. We got some good seats as well. I was very excited. Obviously, I'm a massive Robert Whitaker fan, and it was a very highly anticipated fight. Right, you got this flashy striker who's been steamrolling his opponent, and then had that fight of the year with Kelvin Gastelum taking on Robert Whittaker, one of the best fighters ever, well-rounded. Fought Yoel Romero twice. There was a lot of anticipation around that fight. Personally, going into that fight, I was expecting Robert Whittaker to get the edge, and unfortunately he didn't. And I remember feeling quite upset after the event. But since then, obviously, a lot has happened, and I've obviously been able to follow Israel Adesanya a lot more in terms of what he's doing inside the octagon and sort of outside as well. And my respect for him has completely shot up. He's an amazing fighter as well. And now, after all these years, I think 3 years later, they're fighting again. And I feel the stakes are as high.
Yep. Yeah, you painted a great picture, and it's been a long journey. Just since you said 2019, it just feels like a forever ago, right? With the pandemic, and obviously Robbie's Bobby Knuckles has earned his way back up, through some top opponents, and the way he's done it, has gained the admiration of all fight fans. I think just the way he's gone about it, considering you could think one more fight after the last Izzy one, and he'd be back in contention, but no, he had to fight again, and then he had to fight again because of Izzy obviously going to a different division. But like I said, DJ, I don't feel like, my gut feel is that this fight isn't going to go the way it did last time. That's for sure. What's your gut feel?
I do feel it goes longer for sure. That's something I think, I believe will happen. Look, interesting points that you made as well. Since that first fight, you got to look at the journey they've both been on, right? Very contrasting journeys, but very meaningful for their own individual careers, right? And now it's culminated into this rematch. Let's rewind the clock back. UFC 243. That first round, Robert Whittaker gets dropped in the very last minute of that round. The bell rings. Pin drop silence in the crowd. The highest gate in the history of the UFC in terms of attendance. Massive stadium, home crowd, and obviously the hometown hero gets dropped. And then obviously, say, okay, cool, it's the end of the round, comes back second round, and then we think the title will change. It didn't. The fight went the way it did, and Israel Adesanya obviously knocked Robert Whittaker out in great fashion and captured that lightweight belt, and since then has looked invincible in the middleweight division. So the reason I wanted to take us back to UFC 243 is to sort of analyze both the fighters and the path they've been on. Losing to Adesanya, and he's come out in some of these interviews, and he's done an interview with Fox Sports, and he said this, that he was actually considering stepping away from the game. He wasn't sure, he wasn't hungry for this anymore, and he wasn't feeling the passion. And then once he took that time away, he had time to ponder over things and look at things in a different way. And then he realized, this is me. I love fighting. I enjoy this, and he wanted to make that comeback. And obviously he came back and he fought Darren Till. At the time, Darren Till was considered to be this next person who can dethrone Adesanya, right? There was it was a matchup that was teased by a lot. They were saying this is that next big fight that we'll get to see in the middleweight division. And Robert Whittaker, coming off that loss, coming off everything he had to go through, steps in and fights Darren Till. And it was an impressive performance. I think he got dropped in the first round. I believe it's in the very first minute. He gets dropped. And he gets back up. And then, he continues to fight the way he usually fights, right? And obviously gets the victory, unanimous decision, in typical Robert Whittaker fashion, a complete shutdown. It was a competitive fight, but Robert Whittaker was clearly ahead the whole time, right? And he inside that cage in that fight, he was the superior martial artist. And then he goes on and then he fights Jared Cannonier again in the UAE. Another tough matchup, another fighter who everyone considered to be that next challenger for Israel Adesanya. And Cannonier was, having his win streak of his own, and he was terrorizing everyone in that division. And then he fights Whittaker again, another tough matchup. Again, Whittaker goes and does what he does best, another very comprehensive victory, showed all facets of his game, took out all the tools out of his toolkit, be it striking, be it grappling, and he obviously outclassed Cannonier. It was very close to even putting him away in that last round, I believe. And then we had another fight. Originally was scheduled to fight Paulo Costa. So let's get this straight. So, since losing to Israel Adesanya, he says yes to Till, he says yes to Cannonier, and he says yes to Paulo Costa. 3 killers in the division. Obviously, Costa pulls out for various reasons, and Gastelum steps in. Now, the Gastelum fight, if you recall, CT, another fight that was meant to happen, yes, down under, but obviously Whittaker got injured and had to withdraw from that fight. So that fight eventually happened, and that was a masterclass from Whittaker. Right, it was a 5-0 shutdown. And here's an interesting fact: since that knockout loss to Israel Adesanya, Whittaker hasn't lost a round in the judges' scorecard up until this point. So he's 3 rounds, 11 rounds up, right? So he's definitely got his mojo back. I think some things that I noticed in his recent fights, especially in the fight with Gastelum, is he was more calm and calculated. I think what we saw in that Adesanya fight was he was lunging in a lot more. I don't know. I felt, in my humble opinion, I felt like he was being a bit impatient inside there, whereas I saw a lot of patience in that Gastelum fight, waiting for those opportunities, being very cerebral in there. So, if we are to go by what we've seen so far, we are in for the best Robert Whittaker we've seen so far. Come Saturday night in Houston, and obviously Sunday for us. And then you got to look at the champion on the other end, who's the last style bender, Israel Adesanya, who's put on a very impressive masterclass showcase himself, right? Since winning the belt from Whittaker, he goes on and he fights Paulo Costa, widely considered to be someone who would give his toughest matchup, right? Pardon me, sorry. Actually, after Whittaker, he fought Yoel Romero. Right, so he goes on to fight Yoel Romero in the last card with the crowds before the pandemic hit, if I'm correct. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah, I believe it is. Yeah.
Yeah. That's correct. So he goes on and he fights Yoel Romero. It was a bit of a bummer. It wasn't the fight that everyone anticipated it to be. But then again, Adesanya is a champion, right? He went there and he found Yoel Romero very stationary. He did the best he could. I thought he won that fight the best he could. And then he goes on to fight Paulo Costa, who is considered to be the person who was meant to dethrone him. And it was a complete shutout. It was an amazing performance. It was one of his best performances. And he defends the belt again, Costa, and then he goes and fights. Goes up a weight class to fight Jan Blachowicz. If he had got that win, it would have been a history-making performance. However, not to be, but he still held his own. I thought it was a very reputable performance. Obviously, Jan was the bigger man. His physicality, everything played a part in terms of that ground component of that fight. While he lost, I don't think his brand image got damaged at all. His branding was still intact. potential for greatness, and it wasn't to be. That's all it was. And then obviously comes back down and then fights Marvin Vettori again. Another shutdown, 5-0. Impressive performance. One of my favorite performances of the last Stylebender. What did you think of that performance, CD?
Yeah, like you said, he came in like a man, looking like he's just not willing to lose again. After losing to Jan, obviously, back in his own division, just came out and it was a dominant performance, and he just showed the world again that he is the king of the middleweight division, and there's no one on the planet that's really looked close outside of Whittaker, to even touching him. But just touching on what you just said, how the fight went last time. I think Whittaker was definitely a bit too impatient. Home crowd. He even said it himself. He loves the fact that it's a quiet. He loves the quiet environment, like the pandemic on Fight Island and the Apex, things like that. He can really focus, and that's when you saw the Whittaker, the sharpest we've ever seen him look. Sharp as a knife, and no distractions, no family in the crowd, and no 55,000 screaming locals. So it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to suit Whittaker. Obviously being off home soil, which sounds weird, but it really is. There's a lot more pressure on you, DJ, when you're fighting in front of your family and your home crowd. The expectation, it just took his mind off the task at hand, I think. And I think we're going to see a continuation of the best Whittaker, just sharp, being patient, and I think it's going to be a juicy matchup. Now, do you before we get into our predictions, and who we think might win, do you think it's going to be a stoppage, or do you think it'll maybe last the distance?
I'm going to go ahead and say, CT, that it's going to be a decision. Right? It's going to be a tough fight to call. It's so hard to predict. I mean, obviously, you have to give the edge to the champion. As you said, he's the king of the middleweight, right? He's proven that time and time again. Whether I'm a massive fan of the way he fights. I'm a massive Stylebender fan. I'm also a massive Robert Whittaker fan, right? So it's going to be definitely tough for me to pick one person. One thing though, before we get into the prediction, CT, I wanted to get your thoughts on this. The general notion seems that Whittaker needs to employ a grappling heavy technique to beat Stylebender, or that's where he has the best chance. Do you agree with that?
It's a really good question, and I can understand why people see that way. Just because Izzy's just elite at striking. You know what I mean? He's got the length. He's so long, and you even get close, you've really got to come in to make contact. But I won't say I won't say that's the only way. I can still see Whittaker just because his striking is equally as sharp. I could still see him winning, DJ, on decision, without heavy grappling game. How about yourself? What do you think? What do you think to that?
No, I agree. I just don't like this whole narrative that's being set that he needs to go out there and grapple in order to get the victory. I don't think so. I think Adesanya is a sound grappler himself. He's the champ middleweight division, and he's had a number of fights in MMA. You can't tell that he's not good in a certain discipline of mixed martial arts. I disagree with that. I think it's just that people haven't been able to do that to him. People haven't been able to get him down, or when you get him down, you can't keep him down. You saw that with in the fight with Marvin Vettori. There was a point in the fight, I believe in the second or the third round, where Marvin Vettori gets him down. And not only does Adesanya reverse that, but even at one point he was taunting him while then taking top position. So if you're so the notion that he is weak on the ground. I don't agree with that. And it's a very it's going to be a very tough fight for Whittaker, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, we know that Adesanya definitely has the edge in the striking department. Maybe yes, Whittaker could have that edge in the grappling department, but you've got to get in there first to begin with, and then there's this whole component of being able to keep him down. Vettori wasn't able to, and Vettori's a grappling heavy mixed martial artist. I think whether you like Israel Adesanya or you dislike him, one thing you just got to admit is that you got to respect him as a mixed martial artist. Right? He's one of the best out there. If you don't like him, you're just a hater. That's what you are, right? So he's definitely going to come with having sharpened his tools. We would hope Whittaker's up for it. I really hope. I know they're saying this a lot where Jan laid the blueprint, or we could take a lot from the Jan fight. I hope it's they're not looking too much into it, because I remember going into that UFC 243 fight, a lot of what we heard was we took a lot from the Gastelum fight, or Gastelum's showing us how to close the distance, but obviously it didn't work for Whittaker. That the lunging in, going in, and he got caught. And one thing you need to also understand about the last Stylebender is he is a supreme martial artist. What I mean by that is he's evolving, he's continuously learning, right? He is a much better fighter today than what he was yesterday, and he continues to work on his trade. He's continuously working. So, if you are going into a fight thinking the previous person was able to do it, I believe you're already setting yourself up for failure. So I hope there is not too much into that. But either way, I think the fight goes a lot longer. I personally think it goes the distance. In terms of the prediction, it's a hard fight to call. So I don't know. Based on the last fight, obviously, I should, inch towards Israel Adesanya. But as I mentioned in our last episode, I'm just going to say Whittaker by decision, purely because they can then have that third fight, and the third fight's a draw, and they just ride off into the sunset, two of the best middleweights ever. That's what I think. So I'm going to that prediction. What about you, CD?
Yeah, hey, that's a great outcome. Great prediction, DJ. That would be nice. I would certainly have to agree. For this one, I honestly feel like Robert has had tougher fights. Leading up to this, has had a better, more sharper, road to this bout. Obviously, there's been distractions for Izzy. Facing different weight class with Jan, and then coming back to an easier fight. I think the way he dominated Vettori. Now Whittaker's obviously had a little bit of a break too. The timing, I will say, has not been as ideal, DJ, in terms of the weight. But I'm expecting Whittaker to give it all he's got, and to really surprise some people as well, and just really show that the gap between these two is so minute. Forget about that fight back in 2019. I think Whittaker made some mistakes in that fight, obviously coming forward a lot, being impatient. But I think Whittaker is going to be a lot more calculated. He's going to be sharp on the counter. And he's going to be tough to beat. I could see it just going either way. Honestly, a split decision, and I think Whittaker can get it by a pip.
Yeah, and I think just to linger a bit more on this main event, a couple of points you made. When you're fighting someone, when you're fighting someone like as good as Israel Adesanya, it is one or two worlds, and either way you're in trouble, right? Because obviously he's the champion, he's got the belt, and he's an amazing counter striker, right? anything to do with striking. I believe he's got the PhD in striking, right?
Mm.
It's such a great counter strike because if you lunge forward, you rush him, you're going to get caught, you're going to get split, you're in danger. But at the same time, if you're staying back, like we saw with Romero, Israel Adesanya can still, pick you apart from the outside and accumulate those points and still win, right? So it's either wherever you go, whether you're up close in the striking department or whether you're, waiting, you're still putting yourself in danger, either through getting clipped or in the judges' scorecard. So it's a tricky position there. So it'll be good to see how, Whittaker makes those adjustments. They're both very cerebral fighters as well. They think in there. They don't just go in there and throw hands. They're both very tactical. And it'll be good to see, two great martial artists. Like you said, they're the top. They're in the top of the pile in that middleweight division. So it's great to see. And in terms of rematches, I love this rematch because it's a worthy rematch. Whittaker's earned his way back. Adesanya sitting there at the top of that middleweight division with the belt sitting on the throne comfortably, and then you get the other best fighter in that division now coming to challenge that title. So, look, I really hope the fight lives up to all the hype. I think we are actually going to get fight we wanted at UFC 243, right? We all wanted that, the two beasts going at each other, but I think we're actually going to get it now, 3 years later at UFC 271. I honestly do believe it. So I'm very excited, and also to break it down afterwards. Once the fight's done with you, my man CT.
Yeah, and the best man's just really going to win. Like I said, two people at the top of their game, top of the division, and a lot at stake. Healthy Aussie New Zealand rivalry. Just adding that into the flavor, into the mix, DJ. And the fact that it's again, the second pay-per-view of the year, and at the Toyota Center and full of packed house, big crowd. Bobby Knuckles is going to have a big supporter base. Izzy's always got a big supporter base. And I'm so looking forward to this and breaking it down with you as well. And we'll have a little treat for everyone. We'll have some reaction videos.
We're going to react to these fights, whether it's tears or throwing a chair across the room, or throwing beer cans. Oh my God. One more thing that I'm looking forward to with that main event is the walkout. How can we forget the last Bender's walkout? Like, he always has something exciting for all of his walkouts. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he does here. He had a fantastic walkout at UFC 243 at Marvel Stadium in front of that packed crowd. To do a dance routine and then come into the cage, fight one of the baddest men on planet Earth, and take that belt the way he did. I mean, how could you not respect this guy? And how could you not respect his skills? So yeah, look, I'm looking forward to it. I love this last walkout with the hat. I thought it was amazing. It was a slick walkout. I absolutely loved it. Now we go to the co-main event. We got a fan favorite here. We got Derek Lewis taking on Tai Tuivasa from Sydney. What are your thoughts on this fight, CD? I know you personally love this fight.
Yeah, I do. I love both fighters. Starting with, I guess, Derek Lewis, the Black Beast. Ever since I was watching him in action with you, I think it might have been 2019 as well, where he was losing to Volkov, and then ended up putting him to sleep. After that, the Black Beast, was high on my radar, and I just love what he brings to the sport. His attitude, no nonsense. He goes out there, and there's some legit animosity between these two, I feel. And Tai, obviously on the come up from Sydney, he's earned his stripes. What everything that he's earned, and he's on the come up. Like, the UFC are hoping in a future star for Tai, Bam Bam, And
Yeah, man. Yes, CT, spot on. Like, I love watching Tai Tuivasa fight. I love watching Derek Lewis fight. They're so entertaining. Every time they fight, the action's guaranteed, right? Win, lose, or draw, they bring the action. Um, there's never a dull fight with them. I mean, let's ignore Derek Lewis and Francis Ngannou. It didn't happen. Um, but I'm gonna take the majority of the other fights and assume that this will go that in that direction. Look, Tai Tuivasa has had sort of a rejuvenation in his career in terms of now coming back and putting on entertaining fights, becoming a massive fan favorite. And not just that, it's all good, but if you're not winning, then obviously that they're not as flashy. And that's what Ty's doing great, is that he's winning these fights as well. Very happy for him. He seems to be enjoying what he's doing. It's great. And then to match him up with Derek Lewis in Houston as well, in Derek Lewis's home crowd, he's probably looking for redemption since his last outing in Houston, where he lost to Cyril Gane. So he's out for some redemption. So it's definitely going to be a good fight. Fireworks guaranteed. I'm actually going to go ahead and say Tai Tuivasa is going to win by knockout.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, I'm on that same train. Same train, DJ. I think that the train's going to continue rolling for him. He's hot. What a streak, and what a scalp though. That would be a big win. That would be a huge win to beat Derek Lewis. Not going to lie, it's probably been his toughest opponent, I feel, and he's also going to be weary. Obviously, Derek Lewis is going to try to put him to sleep, and I want to see how Tai, how calm he is. I guess big profile fight, big pay-per-view. Is he going to come out and just be reckless, and get clipped by Lewis, or is he going to play it a little bit smarter? How do you feel? Do you think it's just going to be fireworks, or do you think he's going to be a bit more calculated?
A good point to make, CT. But look, I just think fighting is in their DNA. They just love to fight. So I just can't see either guy being calm or calculated, right? We've seen Derek Lewis always hangs back, right? He hangs back and he waits for his opportunities. Not from a tactical point of view, but he just tries to, manage his energy wisely. And then we got Tai, who's always going forward and he's ready to trade hands. But so I just don't see either of them holding back. But one thing guaranteed, I think we'll get to see a shoey at the end of the night.
Oh, yep. That's what the crowd wants to see, I think.
Yeah.
I think the UFC will get it.
But one thing though, what's next for Tai Tuivasa if he wins? That's a big question, I think, because obviously Derek Lewis up there in the upper echelon of the heavyweight division, right? And we got the likes of Cyril Gane, even though he lost, he's still up there. We got Francis Ngannou, the champion, and we got Stipe Miocic with John Jones about to step in as well. So he then enters himself, Tai Tuivasa then enters himself into an elite group of people up in that division. So it'll be interesting to see if he wins. Does he pursue that title path? Does he go take on who's next? There's also Curtis Blades there as well. I'd love to see maybe, there's another up and comer, Tom Aspinall, fighting out of UK. Yeah. Another big heavyweight prospect as well. Maybe they'll match him up with him if he wins, and then obviously Tom's fighting Volkov later on. So a lot of interesting things, a lot of good things to look forward to with a Tai win. But then if Derek wins, do they then make that rematch with Francis Ngannou? But then how long are they willing to wait? So obviously Francis Ngannou is now looking at getting surgery, and he's looking at being out for a bit. Does Derek Lewis wait, or does he fight Stipe? He's been calling out Stipe, right? And I think there'll come a point where Stipe will say, look, I'll take this fight. Look, I'm not waiting for a title shot anymore, right? I mean, if you are calling out for a title shot, you're confident that you can beat the champion. But if you're confident you can beat the champion, you should be, fine to take a challenger, and you should be confident to beat them too. So I think, if Derek wins, we might see that Stipe fight.
Yep. Yeah, I can see that too. A lot of depth in this division, obviously now, which is great for it. Stipe's been out for a minute. I'm glad you gave props to Tom Aspinall as well.
Yep.
Biggie Boy is probably still around. Jairzinho. But yeah, with Ty with a win, the world's at his feet. The UFC, I think, will then pit him up against the very, very top.
Yep.
The very, very top. This would be what? How many? What streak is he on?
Well, he's clearly at least on a 3-fight win streak, at least.
Yeah.
Right, and he's taken back-to-back fights as well.
Yep. So that has to get you, contention type, close to contention, number one contender fight type thing.
For sure, beating the likes of Derek Lewis should earn you that. And could you imagine someone from our own backyard fighting for the World Heavyweight Championship in the UFC? That would be insane.
Yeah.
And going against someone like Francis Ngannou, I'd love to watch that. That'll be an entertaining fight.
Yep.
And then obviously we go down one more, and we got another crucial middleweight fight between Jared Cannonier and Derek Brunson. Another key fight with a lot of title implications, more so for Jared Cannonier than. Look, I would say Derek Brunson, beating Darren Till, Kevin Holland. He's been able to beat these guys, so he's put a streak together himself as well. How do you think that fight goes?
Yeah, look, another banger again. That's why I love this card so much. DB Derek Brunson, and obviously the opponent, the lead up he's had. He's beaten some very fine players, some fighters in terms of his resurrection, I would say, re-resurrection, and obviously Cannonier has had a somewhat of a funky run into this as well. After losing to Whittaker, after being being right there as the number one contender for so long, in the layoffs he's had. With this said, I think it's beautiful. I love how the fact that they put this on the main card in the same division as a title fight, right? So there's going to be some call outs probably. There's going to be some call outs when one fighter's victorious.
100% guaranteed. I feel whoever wins, they're going to jump on that mic and they're going to call out the champion, or they're going to call out the fight for the belt. Jared Cannonier is still in a good position, even though he lost to Robert Whittaker. He's lost to the guy who's challenging for the title right now. A win here still takes him up to that title contention, especially with the champion constantly, naming you as the next contender in the past as well. So he's definitely got his stock intact. Cannonier's ranked 4th, Brunson's ranked 5th. Right. I feel like the UFC is making a lot of moves in the middleweight division. There's another critical middleweight bout tomorrow between Sean Strickland and Jack Manson, ranked 6 and 7. So they're trying to, I think, come February 14th, 15th, we'll know, sort of what the next steps for that middleweight division looks like, and who the contenders are. And how it plays out. And we find ourselves having Marvin Vettori sort of the outlier there. Obviously beat Paulo Costa after the loss to Israel Adesanya, but it was in that 201 lightweight division, remember, because Costa didn't make weight. It was all sort of drama in that fight, and then they ended up fighting at the 205 division. Marvin Vettori still finds himself sort of floating around there because he's just fought Israel Adesanya. If Whittaker wins, I'd say, there's more of a claim for him to make. The UFC clearly loves him, especially after what he did with that Costa fight and agreeing to, keep that fight alive. I think if Cannonier wins, either Whittaker or Adesanya, even maybe the Adesanya fight's a little bit more lucrative than a rematch with Whittaker at this stage, given it was a one-sided fight. If Brunson wins, look, he's lost to both Whittaker and Adesanya in quite decisive fashion. So you'll need to sell that fight. I think if Brunson wins next Sunday, and then if Strickland wins tomorrow, I can't help but feel Strickland will leapfrog Brunson, being a little bit more of a more of a fan-friendly fighter. Well, look, we don't know. My prediction for that fight, I think Cannonier will edge Brunson. I do feel Cannonier will have his hands raised. I believe it'll be decision. I don't think it will be. I don't think there'll be any knockouts of sorts. I think it'll be a decision and it'll be unanimous. Jared Cannonier. That's my prediction. What about you, CT?
Yeah, I agree. I slightly lean towards Cannonier. Want to give Brunson the respect. He's solid, sound, fundamental. And the stylistically, I think, it's going to be quite even. But yeah, Cannonier, I've got to give him the slight edge, just because of his power, his prowess, and just for, I guess his hunger. He's got to be hungry now. He's got to be hungry.
Yeah, he's definitely chasing that title. One thing that slipped under the radar was that fight between Jared Cannonier and Kelvin Gastelum. They fought as well, if you remember. Obviously, Cannonier got the victory. So yeah, look, definitely an interesting time for the middleweight division. Just to stay in that middleweight division and circling back to the main event, what do you think happens if Israel Adesanya wins? Now, he pretty much would have lapped the division, especially if Brunson wins like Sunday. He would have beaten all the contenders. What do you think's next for Adesanya if he wins?
A great question. Hopefully another blockbuster performance, but you've got to seriously think there's got to be talks towards a John Jones. Maybe another challenge, another type of challenge.
Wait,
maybe he.
Yeah, but John Jones is right now concentrating on the heavyweight division.
Yeah, look, that's true, but I think a call out could change things. But perhaps before that, he tries to go up to light heavyweight again and try to make amends for that first loss in that division. I think.
I agree.
What about you?
100% agree. I think if Adesanya wins, there is another person who's not in the middleweight picture. He's currently the number one pound for pound fighter, Kamaru Usman. Definitely quite a big guy. He can make 185. And as much as I'd love to see that fight, I don't think that fight will happen. They obviously are quite respectful to each other. They're brothers, so they made it clear that they have no intentions of fighting each other. So I think, in which case, Israel Adesanya has proven, if he were to win this fight against Robert Whittaker, I think he's proven without a doubt that he is currently the best middleweight out there, miles apart from everyone else. So he can then afford to take a little bit of time to grab into that 205 frame. I think, look, in my casual opinion, I feel like it was a bit rushed. Maybe a little bit more time, maybe we would have seen a different outcome. I think he was winning the first two rounds of that fight regardless. So I think taking a little bit more time, putting on a little bit more muscle, more mass, I think definitely will help his cause. And I think he should do that. Maybe even taking 12 months away from the game to do that, to then step into that 205 division. And hopefully by the time he does step in, it's Jiri Prochazka who's waiting on the other end with the belt. What a fantastic fight that would be between two amazing strikers. Just take my money. I'd love to see that. And then if Israel Adesanya were to win, what a story, man. One of the best martial artists out there, an outstanding striker, and then a two-weight world champion. It's a storybook career there. So I'd love to see that happen. Your thoughts, CD?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Sign me up for a Jiri Prochazka, fight. That have all the fireworks, all the smoke we need. And it just goes to show you, like, there's always, we always look ahead, DJs. Like, there's always something waiting in the wings is exciting, with this,
Yeah.
with these fights, in the rosters, and this year is just going to be crazy. I'm looking forward to it.
Most definitely too. And like quickly to stay on that topic as well, Robert Whitaker. Right? If he were to win, Robert Whitaker were to become champion, what do you think's next for Robert Whitaker?
Great question. And obviously this one's a little bit more difficult for me to predict. I feel like Robbie would probably have a nice break, and he'd get a real enjoyment out of defending. Like, saying that I'm the champ now and let me defend. And he doesn't duck no one. I could even see him saying, DJ, run it back. Let's say it's a really close decision. I could say, hey, let's run it back, but let's run it back in Australia or something.
Yeah. Look, I think there's going to be a lot of moving parts to this, right? But the most sensible thing I see the UFC doing, or the most obvious thing the UFC doing, I feel, would be that immediate rematch. If Robert were to win, they'll make that third fight. Having the South Bend having won the first one, and Robert Whitaker having won the second one, they'll try and make that third one. That'll be the most obvious part. Especially if Brunson were to win as well. And as I said, they've both beaten him decisively, so they'll try to look for alternate options. Look, the other fight, as I mentioned, we got the pound for pound number one, Kamaru Usman, right? Having left his division, right? The only thing stopping him from going up is his brother holding the belt in Israel Adesanya. So if it was Whitaker, I also see the UFC immediately trying to do that matchup between Kamaru Usman and Robert Whitaker for the middleweight championship, in order to obviously, give an opportunity for Kamaru Usman to lay claim to the 2-weight world champion status, right? Pound for pound number one. He's achieved everything. He has an amazing win streak. Beaten all the top contenders. I don't see anyone beating him in that the welterweight division. But there's obviously that dark horse, Khamzat Chimaev. But outside of that, I don't see anyone else even challenging him. So there's nothing more to do than to go up and challenge for that next belt and claim 2 belts. So I reckon they'll try and do that as well. I think those are the 2 fights that they'll try to make, either the immediate rematch or Usman going up for the double belt. Any other thoughts on UFC 271, CT?
Look, I feel like it's going to be, like I said, one of the best pay-per-views of the year. I can see that. Toyota Center, love their fights. Shout out to them out in Houston again. Hosting this event. It's been it's been a kind place for the UFC to continue to go to. I think they're going to love the fights. No doubt. Like, we all will be ready. And like you said, two really well-liked fighters in the main event. You know what I mean? 2 well-liked fighters, and I feel like it's going to be a nice edge. It's going to be tight. And then obviously you got a heavyweight fight as the co-main. 2 really popular fighters as well, Ty and Derek.
Yep.
That's just going to be a highlight. I think a highlight. The fact that there's a nice mix, a nice blend, and obviously a close contender middleweight, another middleweight fight with Brunson and Cannonier. So look, overall, I think it's going to deliver. No doubt it will. And like I said, I'm just absolutely ready to go. I can't wait for it to start. Right now. What about you?
Same here. I cannot wait. It's going to be a banger of a card. The crowd's going to be insane, especially because their homeboy Derek Lewis is in the card. I think UFC always gets it right in terms of fighter placement in particular cards. They always have a hometown hero if they can. And again, they nailed it here. As I mentioned, it's a top-heavy card, but there are some really good fights. The main event is probably the best one of the lot in terms of the matchup, the skill set. It's going to be a high-level mixed martial arts encounter. I am looking forward to it. I just want to put on my fanboy hat and just watch the fight. I'm excited to see the tactics that are being employed. The corners will play a big part in this as well. Obviously, both teams are quite big in terms of game planning, so it would be good to see, the number one and the number two in that division, going at it. And again, as you said, there's the fan favorite heavyweight. I'd love to see that fight. It's going to be a great card. I can't wait, and then I can't also wait to then get together and break it down afterwards.
Yep, yeah, and of course share our crazy reaction videos, because there's going to be some reactions that'll live on forever, I think, out of this. Like I said, legacy. Before we finish up, DJ, legacies are at stake for these the main event, especially, right? Whittaker loses again to Adesanya, and a lot of people say, yeah, that's his legacy. Just couldn't get over the hump against Adesanya. What are your thoughts on that, sort of with the legacies at stake? Adesanya loses, and suddenly he's lost a couple, and his legacy can change.
Yeah, 100%. I think there was this statement made that I think that the aura of invincibility for Adesanya disappeared since he lost to Yan. I think I'm going to disagree on that, because if you look at the middleweight division and the fights that he's had, even after that loss, he's had one, I believe, since that loss, but he's just been untouchable at middleweight. That aura of invincibility at middleweight is still there, right? If anyone were to ask who's the best middleweight at the moment, hands down, we're going to say Israel Adesanya being that champion, that rightful champion. And if anyone were to ask who's the second best, I wouldn't even use the word second best, equally good martial artist in that division, I would say Robert Whittaker. He's one of those very rare, well-rounded fighters. Wherever the fight goes, he's very, very confident in those areas. He's very good at in the striking department. He's also very good in his in the grappling department. But as you said, I think let's say a loss to Adesanya definitely then, starts to bring that conversations of the aura of invincibility. Is he beatable now? It does create that slight dent in that aura of invincibility. And then when you look at Robert Whittaker, if he loses, then it obviously puts him in a very tough position. He's clearly proven that he's also on top of that division, and he has beaten everyone else. I know he hasn't fought Marvin Vettori, and he hasn't fought Costa yet. I do think he beats the both of them. So so he finds himself in that weird space where he can beat everyone else, but he seems to, not able to get over the ropes with Adesanya. So it puts him in a very tough spot there. And then again, definitely 2 losses to the champion or challenger at the time and now champion. Definitely, I think takes a bit of the shine off. Definitely, I agree.
Yep. Yeah, and that's what makes this such a great card, and like so much at stake. Like I said, we were there in the house, in the building, the last time they fought. This one rings really home with us. Rings a special home for us, right? With the best fighters of our country and this region, Izzy and Bobby, and very, very well liked fighters, DJ. And I think we're going to remember this one forever. I think so. Can't wait.
100%. 1 week to go, guys. Get that pay-per-view and buckle up and enjoy the show. Having said that, it's quite late here in Melbourne, so that is a wrap.
And we'll see you on the next episode of That's a Tap. Salute.
Thanks, guys.